Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about PlayStation because Sony just released a bunch of in-depth reports about how their games are selling, how the PlayStation 5 is selling. And honestly, they're kind of crazy because the PS5 has now sold more than pretty much any other console ever. The only actual competitor it has is stuff like Nintendo Wii, the 3DS, and also the PlayStation 4. But the other thing that's crazy is they admit they regret buying Bungie. I want to go through all this because I do find it interesting how the business is changing. There's been so much debate online about whether it is that Sony is actually keeping up, how Sony is staying so successful when they're releasing themselves so few first-party games, and honestly, just the fact that it does seem like in general, more and more people are going to PC gaming. It doesn't feel like console is exploding as fast as it did last gen. But let's break it down. I hope you're having a great day, and if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let's just start with this raw number to it. This is crazy. They said that PlayStation 5 has now shipped 84 million units worldwide. This is insane. The fact that this is technically now, I think as this is released, technically today is like the 5th anniversary of the release of the PlayStation 5. So 84 million units in 5 years is legitimately one of the highest selling consoles ever. And that's just crazy to think about. They also said Ghost of Yotei sold 3.3 million units. Now, some people are thinking this number is a bit low. The attach rate specifically for some PlayStation games seems oddly lower than you would expect, right? What is that? About 5% attach rate, 4.3% attach rate of people that own a PS5 versus buying this. Sony themselves says they're actually very happy with this. And it's actually pretty close to what Ghost of Tsushima sold. Essentially, it sold like 10% less than Ghost of Tsushima, but with a $10 higher price tag. So technically, it's more profitable even if it's slightly less popular. I don't know. To me, I love Ghost of Yotei a lot, so I'm glad that Sony is at least claiming that it was a big hit. Although we've seen companies lie in the past. Obviously, Microsoft has done stuff like they said Hi-Fi Rush came out, and they said, oh, we're super happy with the sales of Hi-Fi Rush, and then shut the studio down like 3 weeks later. But let me go on to this. Here's just a headline that seems impossible. PS5, just the PlayStation 5, not PlayStation, just the PlayStation 5 has now outsold every Xbox console ever released. That means it is legitimately just combine everything that Microsoft has ever done in the hardware space. It's bigger than all of it. It's just wild. It's just wild that the PS5 is that freaking popular. But the other part of the reason I want to talk about this is that I have seen a lot of people talk about the fact that a lot of interest in console gaming has definitely shifted. A lot of people, especially younger people, they'll build a PC. They'd rather just have like a low-end PC they can slowly upgrade over time. Or a lot of kids are playing stuff on the Nintendo Switch or the Switch 2. And so there has been some analysis that essentially there is less and less new people entering the audience. A lot of people that are buying PlayStation 5s are people in my age group, right? People in their 30s, right? But as PlayStation 5 celebrates its 5th anniversary, Sony has reported the console at 84 million units, putting virtually neck and neck with the PlayStation 4. Somebody measured this and said that it's like 3.2% difference, which, I mean, at this point, that is so measurably close. The only time we had any sort of thing, I think this was during the shortages of the PlayStation 5 that we were having there for a bit. Wow, though. It's just wild to see such a straight chart of millions of consoles sold. But here's the other thing. Ghost of Yotei is a major hit like its predecessor. Now, the reason I've been talking about that is that so many people have been trying to claim that this game is a massive financial flop. I've heard a lot of people, I've seen a lot of thumbnails and stuff going around on social media. There have apparently been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos that Sony is mad about Ghost of Yotei. I just don't really understand it. There is a secret number that even in all these like very public financial reports, something we don't actually have, which is like number of new players. This is something that really only Sony or Xbox or Nintendo have. They have an ability to tell if the first game you've ever played on your console is something like Ghost of Yotei or Mario Kart World or whatever, right? They have an ability to tell, did somebody buy the console for this game? That's the number we don't really have. But I kind of wonder if Sony is sort of including that, if there was, I don't know, some amount of people that were like waiting for Ghost of Yotei specifically, or people bought it and went, oh, now I have an excuse to finally get a PlayStation 5. But it seems like Sony is definitely happy. The fact that they're calling it a major hit and not just saying we're pleased with the numbers, I think is a very interesting sign. But let me go to the bad news here. This to me is very interesting. So ever since Sony bought Bungie, there has been a lot of talk about how this went, because they did spend billions and billions of dollars to buy Bungie. And when they bought it, initially, people were confused because when they bought Bungie, all Bungie really does is Destiny. And lately, the numbers for Destiny have been apocalyptically bad. There have been, at times, this is not an exaggeration, there have been times where there is single-digit concurrent players on Destiny lately, on Steam specifically. Now, keep in mind two things. One, Destiny is free to play. It's legitimately, you can install Destiny 2 right now and start playing it. Absolutely $0 upfront cost. You got to pay for like the good stuff like the expansions and stuff, but you can play it right now for free. And it's also cross-play. And even then, it seems like nobody is playing the game. And I don't really blame them. At this point, it seems like it's pretty much abandonware. And they said this: Destiny 2 hasn't reached Sony's expectations following the Bungie acquisition, says CFO Lin Tao. Regarding Destiny 2, partially due to the changes in the competitive environment, the level of sales and user engagement have not reached the expectations we had at the time of acquisition. While we continue to make improvements, we downwardly revised projections for the time being and recorded an impairment loss against a portion of the assets of Bungie. Now, in business speak, it sounds like the primary reason they bought Bungie wasn't just because, hey, we want a bigger staff. We want people with experience making shooters. We want to have this classic like legacy studio merged in. It sounded like the original reason they bought them is because they wanted the Bungie help on other live service games. There's big talks that obviously things like Concord, there's their new upcoming game, Fair Games and stuff. It sounds like they were like, all right, you guys have built a huge live service game, help us. There's talks about, there's basically, Bungie is the reason the Last of Us online game got canceled and stuff. It's that essentially they were going to be the tastemakers. And it seems like internally and externally, they're getting to a point where they just feel like these people are not pulling their weight. They're not doing enough work. Or even there has been talks very publicly that they're talking about absorbing Bungie, basically getting all the hardest working developers and just moving them to the other studios and saying, hey, now you work at Insomniac, now you work at Sucker Punch, and just basically keeping the brand, the idea of Bungie, and maybe keeping the Marathon team, if Marathon's a success, which I don't think it's going to be. It's just odd to see them sort of making such an expensive acquisition and having such loud buyer's remorse. But here's another headline that I think a lot of people are sort of discussing. These numbers came out at 3 a.m. my time, Texas time, and I'm recording this at 7 a.m. But immediately, even now, 4 hours of layover of pretty much dead of night, I've seen a lot of people discussing this quote specifically. CFO Lin Tao says the PS5 is only in the middle of its life cycle and they want to expand the life cycle even further. Now, this quote does not mean exactly what you think it means. Let me break this down because I think she's being very clear as to what she's actually talking about. Our view is that compared to conventional console life cycles, look at the PS4 life cycle, it seems to be getting longer and longer, especially the PS4, which was launched in 2013, and it's been over a decade, but there are many active users enjoying the console. So there has been a ton of cross-gen. There are still games to this day, like to this week, that are being released on the PlayStation 4. A lot of games, if you're making like especially if you're doing some sort of like retro port, something like the Final Fantasy Tactics, all sorts of stuff. The what was that? The Marvel vs. Capcom collection and stuff. That's released on the PlayStation 4. They don't even bother making a native PlayStation 5 version. You just buy it on the PlayStation 4. There are still millions, tens of millions of people almost every month that are playing on the PlayStation 4, even though PS5 is the console, right? So I think what she's saying here is that she just considers this, still technically considers it to be part of the PlayStation 4 lifecycle, even though PS5 is obviously the focus. So from that perspective, we believe the PS5 is only in the middle of the journey. We're planning to expand it even further. I think what she's saying is that the PlayStation 6 is very much going to be like the way it's treating the PlayStation 4 right now. I think the PS6 and the PS5 are going to have a ton of crossover, a huge amount of cross-buy, stuff like that, right? And I also think she's subtly signaling about how there are the leaks and rumors about the PlayStation 6 handheld. Now, the PS6 handheld, according to all the leaks, is that basically it's going to be able to play PlayStation 5 games and PlayStation 4 games natively. It will install on it. It'll play it. It doesn't need Wi-Fi. It doesn't stream. It is just a carry console with the power of the PlayStation 5. I think essentially what she's trying to say is that even as next gen begins, it'll still be the generation of the PlayStation 5. I think this is her saying that. I don't think this is saying that it's going to come out in 2030. Some people are sort of reading this is that if we're 5 years into this, maybe that means this is a 10-year life cycle. I don't think it's that. I do believe the leaks that Sony is planning to release the PlayStation 6 in 2027. I think she's essentially saying we're fully supporting all cross-gen stuff with the PlayStation 5 until 2030. It's a bit of a gamble. I will say that the idea of having a longer lifespan, especially in this economic climate, smart. Very, very, very smart. I do think it's interesting how many people are still, right now, hardcore gamers, specifically on the PlayStation 4. Now, overall, all this sales data, pretty dang good. Operating income is lower, mostly because of how bad Destiny is doing. But overall, revenue is up, hardware is up, network service is up, monthly active users is up. Now, this is honestly, a lot of this stuff is year on year. It's interesting how well Sony is doing without really releasing that many games. I did see a quote. There was apparently some journalist that had a quote that said, "It's easy to win when your competition refuses to run the race." And I do agree with that. Part of the reason I think Sony is so far out in the head is now it's become the default console. You can't go buy an Xbox, or if you do, you're basically screwing yourself. You might as well save up and get a PlayStation 5 because it'll play all the Xbox games better and have, the 2 PlayStation exclusives we get a decade. How do you feel about the current age of PlayStation? And do you think that Sony's anger towards Bungie is justified? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. It is freezing here in Texas, and I don't have a car. I ride my bike everywhere. Last night, I rode my bike to get some food, and I was freezing. I just want to say, guys, very thankful for these spotlights this morning at 7 a.m. It is 40 degrees, which to me, and my redneck ass, that's freezing.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.